Hi, I'm Jill from Grownup Dish, and I'm here today with Steve Gilmartin, COO of Vidya Life, and we're going to talk about CBD. So Steve,
happy to be here.
Thanks. We see CBD everywhere. Everybody's putting it in everything.
Yes, they are.
What the hell is it?
It is the primary active compound, organic compound that comes out of industrial hemp, which is different from marijuana in that marijuana has more than 0.3% THC by weight upon harvest under federal law. This has 0.3% or less. And CBD is one of the active ingredients, but colloquially it is known, the whole sort of industry is known as CBD. Really, it's hemp extract.
Okay, so CBD, marijuana, two different things.
Completely.
Okay, marijuana gets you high.
Yes, it does.
Does CBD get you high?
CBD will not get you high. It's often said that there are no psychoactive effects, but that's not accurate because it will combat anxiety, it'll combat depression under certain circumstances, depending on genetics and that sort of thing, and the FDA will have to confirm all of that, but colloquially at least, I can't say that word, CBD is known for a host of different effects, but none of them is the munchies or putting you to sleep or getting you high, making you paranoid, none of that stuff.
Okay, but can CBD help you sleep?
Yes, it can.
Okay.
In fact, I have a 12-year-old daughter who sleeps with the aid of CBD, and she's been sleeping with it for 9 years because since she was 9, because she suffers with anxiety.
Okay. So when I go I can't walk into a name brand drugstore right now without finding a half a shelf, probably soon to be a whole shelf,
right,
of CBD products. And I sit and I look, the formulations vary, the strengths vary, the claims vary. Mm-hmm. And what I'd like to dive into now is some of the things that consumers should look for when they're choosing a CBD, or what kind of criteria should they be using to evaluate. And so the first question is, I'm walking down the aisle, I'm confused. I see some things that say full spectrum or broad spectrum, and then I see other things that say isolate. I don't know what the difference is.
Okay, so isolate is a single molecule. It's the CBD itself. You don't want that. You want the broad spectrum because the more active compounds that you have from the hemp, the better your effect is going to be.
So in this case, purest isn't necessarily best.
Right, and that's because the entourage effect, as it implies, it's more than the sum of its parts. If the first time you ever heard music was a trumpet, you'd think that was amazing. But if you heard an orchestra, you'd understand entourage effect.
That is a great analogy. That's awesome. Okay, so the next thing I might do is pick up a package and I start looking at the ingredient list. Now, some packages probably don't even have the ingredient list on there. But what should I look for? What's a good thing to be on the ingredient list, and what's a bad thing?
Well, in general, it's going to be the same way that you would shop for food for your kids, for example. The longer the name of the ingredient, the less likely it is that you want to put that in your body. You will find that some ingredients lists do not say CBD on them because the FDA considers that to be an active ingredient of an approved drug. So they will say things like hemp extract or hemp extract aerial parts, which means the parts that are above the ground. What you're trying to find from a hemp perspective is hemp extract, not hemp seed extract.
Okay.
Not everybody's honest about that, but if you have hemp seed and no hemp other than seed, you're not getting any actual active ingredients.
Okay, so that's important. So hemp seed, not good.
Hemp seed has no what are called cannabinoids.
Okay, good. Let's say I've narrowed it down to a couple of brands, and before I spend $30 or $100 on something, I'm going to go home and I'm going to look at the company's website,
right,
and I'm looking for something, as I understand it, called a certificate of analysis. Can you tell us what that is, and what are we looking for on that?
Usually referred to as a COA, certificate of analysis. Some people call it certificate of authenticity, but what it means is ideally a third-party lab has analyzed not just the ingredients in the product you're looking at, but the finished product itself to determine what's in it. And you want to make sure that everything you want is in it and nothing you don't want is in it. And you also need to check the potency. So the label will say, call it 500 milligrams or 1,000 milligrams. The FDA actually tested that and found 90% of the labels are wrong. So you want to have a reputable third-party lab do a COA that tells you what's in it and how much.
Right, and the other thing I think people might not understand, because I didn't understand it at the beginning, it's like you pick up a bottle and it says how many milligrams are on here, but that's the milligrams that are in the entire bottle.
Correct.
Right, and then you basically, it's sort of like getting a bag of chips and it tells you how many calories, but then you realize the serving size is 4 chips.
Right.
So you actually have to divide by the serving or the dosage to get the...
You divide by the amount that you're taking at any given time to figure out how many milligrams of the active substance you're actually getting.
Right. So you and I talked about this. So this bottle has...
That's 1,000 milligrams of broad spectrum with a 1 milliliter dropper. So you'll get about 33 milligrams per dropper.
Right. So you got to do that math.
Right. And
okay.
There's, by tradition, it's always the amount of active ingredient in the bottle, but even that gets violated quite a bit.
Okay, and that brings me to my next question, which is, how is the potency verified?
So that's on the COA again.
Okay.
But you have to be, like I said, you have to, a third-party lab ideally, because everybody wants to say that I have the most potent stuff. You can go on Amazon today and find things that claim to be 50,000 milligrams in a 1 ounce bottle. The only way that that could be true is if it's hemp seed oil, and they're talking about 50,000 milligrams of hemp seed oil, because it's an impossible dose for CBD.
Okay.
Dosage in CBD in a bottle like that size would typically range between, on the extreme low end, 10 or 20 milligrams, and on the extreme high end, something like 2,500 or 3,000. You'll never be in the 5 figures.
Okay.
Now, to assess what's actually in the bottle, you need to look at a third-party CoA.
Okay, and if a company doesn't have a third-party CoA on their website, right, you should run. Okay, right, or if you contact them, and they don't provide that publicly, that should be a cause for concern.
I would say so, yeah. For the same reason that if you called your acetaminophen company and they said, no, I'm not going to give you purity results.
Okay.
Well, why not? Something wrong there? And it's not as though you can't get the CoA from a reputable company. They're out there.
Okay. And the final thing is, let's talk a little bit about testing.
Yeah.
Because I know some companies test before they manufacture and don't always test after they manufacture. But at the end of the day, all that really matters is what you're putting on your body or what you're putting in your mouth, correct?
That's correct, as long as what you mean by what you're putting in there is a broad spectrum with multiple minor cannabinoids and the terpenes and no ingredients that you don't want. And that can get lost along the way. So typically a manufacturer will buy an extract oil from a lab, or they'll do it themselves and test it at that oil stage. Then if you get it from a third party, the way we operate, we have to test it again because I don't necessarily trust someone who tested it themselves. So it's tested twice before we do anything with it. Then we carefully control the manufacturing process and then test the finished product again to again make sure that it's got all the potency that you want, it's got the minor cannabinoids that you want, it's got as many terpenes as you can get, and it doesn't have anything icky in it like heavy metals or microbiological contaminants.
Okay, so that's great. That's what you do, but how do I know what everybody else does?
Again, you got to find the CoA.
Okay.
It's the key to this whole thing. If you're not looking at testing, then the next best thing you can do is check with people who are your buddies who are using a similar product. But even then, I wouldn't be comfortable unless I saw the actual CoA. Hemp is really, really good at pulling terrible stuff out of the ground. You can clean up toxic waste dumps by putting hemp on it.
Oh, by planting the plant.
Right, because the hemp will pull the contaminants out of the ground and into the plant. So if you don't know where your hemp is coming from, you don't really know enough. Hemp can come from China, it can come from any number of different places where it's either unregulated or untested. And if you have a test that is from some place you don't necessarily trust, how do you know that test is on the hemp that you're about to ingest?
That just made me think of another question. Do companies generally disclose where the original source of their hemp, that it's US hemp, that it's Colorado hemp versus China hemp?
You will see a lot of marketing and advertising around that, but there are no such requirements. And in fact, you can find there are things starting to crop up, sort of trust branding. Like we have the hemp industry seal of approval, for example. Well, certain of those, and I won't get into it, but certain of those don't actually require you to have hemp from a certain place.
Okay.
They don't necessarily require organic practices either. So, you might wind up with China farmed hemp on a toxic waste dump that's covered with glyphosate if you're not careful. So you have to look at the CoA. And you have to trust the COA is from a third party that's reputable and actually applies to your hemp.
Okay. Last question.
Mm-hmm.
There are two schools, when I was researching this article,
Yes.
there are two schools of thought about how to start with CBD and dosaging.
I know exactly where you're going with that.
So one school of thought is that you start at a low dosage and then you titrate up. You know, if it doesn't work, you take a little bit more the next day and a little bit more the next day to test to see if it works. Now, I know you have a different approach. It's actually the approach that I used when I tried it, and it is a little bit different. And I'd like you to share what that approach is and talk a little bit about why you think it's better.
Absolutely. So, while I recognize that from a call it the principles of conservatism, you would want to start small and build up. I actually believe in managing human behaviors, and the number of individuals who have the discipline to start small and build up and build up and build up and get to a therapeutic dose that happens to be on the high end is quite small. If you start out with, say, 5 or 10 milligrams for a few days, you're a few days in and you haven't felt anything yet. If you then spend the next 5 days, say, or 4 days with 10 or 20 or 15 milligrams, whatever it is, by the time you keep going down that path, 30 days have gone by and you still haven't felt anything from this. What are the chances you're going to keep that up? Now, my philosophy, our philosophy, is completely the opposite. We want to start you out at a fairly high dose so that you know in short order, without governing your behavior in any way other than trying it every day, taking a little bit every day, you'll know in short order whether it's going to work for you. If you get to the end of a 30-day program like this one, where you're taking 1,000 milligram tincture every day, so 33 milligrams of CBD, plus putting an ice or a balm or something on whatever else, either muscle joints or skin or something like that, and get to the end of 30 days and don't have any results, pretty good bet that you're not a good bet for CBD. But if you tried it the other way, you might get 60 days in and still not know. And we just hate to see people try this and not get a really good answer, because then they walk away saying it's snake oil and it hurts the whole thing for everybody.
Right. It hurts the whole industry, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Can you take too much?
You know, it's a funny thing. The only person I've ever heard complain of having taken too much CBD is the most type A individual I've ever met in my entire life.
Worse than me?
Okay. Believe me.
Okay.
This guy is something. And he said he felt sluggish. And I said, no, you feel normal. That's the way everybody else feels all day long, every day.
Right.
But I've never heard of anyone else having any kind of side effects from CBD.
Yeah, I'll share, and I put this in my article, that the first time I tried it, I felt a little sleepy, but I was exhausted. I had been running on nerves.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and when I stopped and thought, do I feel sleepy? I was like, no, I feel relaxed, and like I could sleep, because I'm tired and I haven't been sleeping.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to discern the difference.
And you will, occasionally you'll hear about someone who says, man, I feel different. I feel odd. But if you talk to them long enough and they experience it long enough, they realize that odd is probably better than what they were feeling before.
And does it level out? So if you feel a little weird the first time you try it, by day 5, do most people feel pretty good? 2
points on that. A, yes, and B, unlike THC, you cannot build up a tolerance to this stuff.
Okay, that's good to know.
So if 33 milligrams is working for you, it'll keep working for you. It's not like THC or pot or booze or something where if a 6-pack was working for you, then in 2 years you need a 12-pack.
Okay.
That's not the case. Another point on that is that it tends to, in some individuals, many, it tends to build. So the effect is building and building and building, and you don't necessarily notice it. You're more or less a boiling frog at that point. And then if you stop taking it, it all comes crashing down, and you realize, wow, why am I road raging?
Right.
Oh, I ran out of CBD.
Right. That's how probiotics work for me. I think they're doing nothing, and then I stopped taking them for a few days, and I'm like, oh no, they were definitely doing something.
Definitely preventing.
Yeah, they were doing some stuff.
Right.
All right. Well, this is super helpful. Steve and his partner at Vidya Life, they are sharing a discount code with Grownup Dish readers, so you can get 20% off your order.
Happy to do it.
Using code GrownUpDish20, and I will put that at the bottom of the video. Steve, thanks so much for your time today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.